That's 6 hours of the Glen, hey? In a few minutes, I'm just going to be trying to cover what stood out for me from that race, because there was a lot, but also you can fit some of them under the same banner. I think the first thing you can fit under the banner is about the amount of laps they were behind the safety car. There was so much pacing going on over the course of the race, from the offs from the start to the wet weather running to all of the crashes. It was story after story after story like that. FCYs, local yellows, all of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it ruined the race. In fact, it just changed the character a bit, because you have this endurance race, this 6-hour race, which is actually split up into a lot of different sprints. It's kind of what we like in NASCAR in a way. Another property that I think is under the same license as IMSA, isn't it? Or the same ownership even. Like, I like when NASCAR has like natural stage cautions where the wreck happens around the time that the stage would end. You know, like was it last year where on the road courses they didn't have cautions? Those kinds of things are really nice, because it changes the personality and the character of the race, because you're not so much having to think long term, you're also having to react a lot more to the short term, which sometimes happens in endurance racing, but sometimes you can just have relentlessly consistent races with very little caution periods, which has been the way the 2025 has gone in a lot of different series. Take Le Mans, we only had one safety car the entire time this year. But at the same time, there is a difference between, say, making the right calls and making the wrong calls. A team that made the right call was the number 60, the Marshank Racing number 60 Acura. Blomqvist and Brown ended up winning at 6 hours and 8 seconds, .598, from two Cadillac Wayne Taylor cars, the 40 by 1.88 and then the 10 by 5.265. The 31 was leading as they were going on to the final lap, but ran out of fuel. That whole thing of long-term versus short-term when it comes to different reactions. It was quite impressive to see that run towards the end, and to see the strategies playing out the way that it did. The poor 31 ended up down in 5th behind the number 6 Porsche. But yeah, it was a nice story to have in the end, even if it was dramatic, even if it wasn't ideal. Because, well, that Lambo was up at the front at some point. They were already 40 seconds off the win at the end of it, which is probably the best result that the SC63 has had. And it was Grosjean and Kvyat behind the wheel. I'd like to see a more favourable bop for that car. I'd love to see what it does when it's on a completely even playing field, because whilst I am aware that some of the drivers in the faster cars are probably more dialed in with their cars than the Lambo, especially given that it's only part-time because it does the endurance rounds. But I'm sure that there could be a little bit in terms of a couple of breaks of the bop that go in its favour. Meanwhile, the returning LMP2s had lots of drama. There were a few different incidents that affected them over the course of the race. I think the one that stands out to me, wasn't it the 52, the PR1 Matthewson Motorsports entry? That was the one where it was coming out the boot and had the incident. Elsewhere, there were a couple of other cars that ended up in similar kind of issues. Not necessarily LMP2. That number 7 crash for Nick Tandy was massive. And that 7 car had been in great form up until the last couple of rounds. But yeah, it was a good win from United Autosports in the end. De Resta makes up for what happened at Le Mans the previous week over the crowd-strike race by APR with the Era Motorsport number 18 in third. Oh no, I've skipped over the AO, haven't I? I've skipped over poor Spike the Dragon, who was second. Then it was crowd-strike in third, then Era in fourth, from Riley in fifth. Elsewhere in the GTs, GTD Pro went the way of BMW, which is a good story for BMW. I'm sure they probably celebrate a little bit more over in their native Germany with the Nürburgring 24 hours, but at the same time, after what was such a dismal weekend at Le Mans, a win with the Glen is also good. And it's good for the 48 PMR car. I know they didn't have the same dramas as the number 1 did last time out, but it was still quite a bit of drama for them. Meanwhile, the 27 won GTD. At one point, the 27 showed up as the number 13. And, yeah, it was a good job by them to be able to get a win for Heart of Racing. And Heart of Racing, in the GTP, is it another best finish for them as well? Sure, they were 1 lap off the win at the end, and that was just to do with how the safety car timings happened. But they were a top 10. They got 9th. Either way, those are all the stories that stood out to me. Was there any that stood out to you? Let me know in the comment section down below, because I might have overlooked the one that stood out to you the most. Thanks so much for watching and joining, folks, and I hope to see you again soon for more. Until then, it's bye-bye for now.